Hi, I'm Robbie and this is already the 5th video in a series of 8 about making exhibitions. The series is based on the course I developed many years ago and I gratefully use my own experience for illustration. This video is about the work plan and the budget. They are closely intertwined. That is why I will discuss them both here. And I do this by looking back at the CHAKIF, the Children's Art Kite Festival, that I organized over a number of years. In order to get a good idea of my planning situation those days, I must start with telling you something about what preceded it. In the meantime, I will get you acquainted with the atmosphere of the CHAKIF through some pictures. After being worked for several museums and cultural centra, I started in the early 80s with a small gallery in the very south of the Netherlands, bringing a different exhibition every month. Those days, newspapers were very important to make publicity, and when you bring something interesting, the local media sent a journalist and a photographer. And in the following weeks, you are mentioned every day in the exhibition agenda. With those pieces in the newspapers, we soon get a lot of visits from artists who hoped for an exhibition. But just like other galleries, we were soon fully booked for more than a year or longer, I don't know anymore. The artists know that too, so they are already prepared for a rejection. For example, I had once an artist who came into the gallery, put down, doesn't work, then he looked up, then he picked up the works again and disappeared. I probably didn't react enthusiastically enough. Well, I actually thought it was very interesting work, but yes, well, the range is so large and the artist often so nice that I started looking for other places and possibilities where they could present their work. Not only the artist sees the articles, those often appear in the newspaper, also receive several requests to contribute to local activities. The theater that has a special week, the library that comes with the literature program, a company that is having something to celebrate, all places where artists could present their work. And so I was able to help both the artists as those organizations. Like the other day, when they wanted me to present books and art on a poetry festival. But I had to wear a smoking, a jacket. I don't know exactly how it's called. This is a rare picture of me wearing such a thing. And of course, it's the Netherlands, so I was wearing wooden shoes. Well, and then there were the children. We had a special place in our children's books, for our children's books, so they expected also a special exhibition for them in that room. With the result that we soon had 2 monthly exhibitions in our gallery, one for adults and one for the children. Since we were in the 80s, we were the only gallery who made exhibitions with art specially made for children. It didn't take long before the Amsterdam Library contacted us because they wanted to rent those exhibitions from us. Yes, you can make an exhibition and then break it down, but you can also rent it out. And when you have those exhibitions ready for travel, well, the demand also increases. The only problem was that we needed exhibitions material, and we didn't make any money with those exhibitions for children. So we were pleasantly surprised when the supporters made a donation so we could buy a machine to make frames and transport boxes for about 200 small exhibitions. And then at a certain point, the Netherlands Education Abroad Foundation asked whether we could also deliver exhibitions and projects internationally. Well, that was possible. I love to travel and I had never been to Taiwan. So when they asked me how much the exhibition would cost, I said, well, the exhibition is for free, but I have to come to set up all the exhibition myself. So at those traveling exhibitions, people wanted educational activities, of course. Fortunately, I studied educational science myself, and my partner, artist Joke van der Wijst, she was trained to give creative lessons. So it became a total packet of exhibition combined with one-off activities. I think it's very important that children learn about art and making art. But I also think it's important that this is done by many children. Artists usually organize drawing and painting courses, but it's only a limited group of children who attend them. And for the parents, those children are making art. And art is something special. And as a parent, you enjoy it from a distance. I just want to remove that distance. The artist became very interested in more open and promotional activities as we did. So I just suggested to paint kites with children. Then they do receive guidance from artists, but they do not make art. And to paint kite, anybody can do that. And the parents love it because suddenly they were involved in making it, not making it, but making sure that the kite goes into the air. And that idea appealed enormously, and that is how Chakif was born. Those activities took place throughout the Netherlands. And as you understand, there were activities on top of the other activities we are already doing, like our monthly exhibition at several places, the 100 traveling exhibitions for children, my experimental project, and of course we had a bookshop to create income. When I put it this way, it sounds like a lot of work, but it's not that bad. Just think about how things are in a restaurant. When you are the only one, it will take much, much longer than when the restaurant is full packed. So let's have a closer look at Chakif. It became quite a success. We made blank kites centrally. I distributed them throughout the Netherlands, where we had in every province artists who let children paint kites. Once in a year we had a big festival on the beach, and later the kites were exhibited in all kinds of places. So let me start with the Kite Festival because of the importance of one of our sponsors, which was the weekly magazine Libelle, one of the largest and oldest Dutch family magazines. So every year in the summer the magazine held a very big beach festival, and we were invited to participate. So we got our own big tent, and all the children who had painted kites could enter for free with their parents. And because our kite festival took place on the beach. Due to the attention in that magazine, we received many requests to participate and to exhibit the kites, including from children and other hospitals. Large government buildings such as town halls, very big, also want a kite exhibition. And usually those exhibitions were opened with a kite painting activity. Also, other large festivals invited us. There was a large agrarian festival in the north of the Netherlands. Previously the artists had made kites together with the children. And then we had the exhibition of them all at the festival, as you can see on the picture. And just like Vietnam, the Netherlands has many rivers and sea and a lot of water. And just as in Vietnam, the Netherlands also love to set up festivals. So there was a National Week of the Sea, and we were invited with our kites to come there. But to conclude this photo overview, something really special. The request came also from abroad. In 2007 I was invited to present the kites at the first children's festival in Iraq as a guest of honor. There was still kind of war going on, so we had a lot of police and soldiers to protect the kites. Regularly we had to move from one place to another because there was again the announcement of the bomb threat. They always notified us on time, and then we moved to another place. At a certain point we ended up at the office of the Ministry of Culture, where those pictures are made. So I was asked if I wanted to stay to develop other activities, but I wasn't so confident about the situation, and rightly so, as it turned out a few years later. However, sharing knowledge with a country that is rebuilding after a war, it really appealed to me. And Vietnam is a household name for people of my age. And well, there's no longer a threat of war there. Thus, that is how I end up in Vietnam. If we now come to the planning and budgeting more concretely, I may surprise you that I don't use a computer, especially for complex planning. This for the simple reason that I need at least a few square meters for my overview. It starts with writing all the small things on sheets. For example, you give a sheet with a contact person, a yellow dot, sheets with delivery date, a blue dot, and so on. And I love to put everything on the wall. Not only easy to add and to replace notations, but I'm working also in the room. I'm also doing other things. And every time I look at the wall, I see something else. After a while, I really can dream the whole planning. And then it's time to write resume and use that to make a computer version. Computers are very fast when we exactly know what to search for. However, often there's something on the tip of our tongue and then it's not enough for a search on the computer. You can put your tongue in it. But flipping through papers, we will find it. The new media offer many advantages for a number of things, but also have disadvantages. Often we trust it too much. I mean, the computer doesn't make mistakes, but we sometimes enter the wrong data, and then that can lead to very strange results. Young people are grown up with computers. They use them for almost everything, forgetting two things. At first, a computer can only do things it is programmed for. And yes, then it works much better than we do. But at the second, the more important thing is that we often underestimate the capacity of our own brains, especially that we are capable of doubling something. A computer gives only the result. When you fill in a part is €100 instead of 10, it doesn't ask, are you sure about that? No. When you're writing it on paper and then you see that, you ask yourself, is it really that expensive? Because of this, I never made a concept budget on my computer. I do it in my mind and on paper. When writing down on paper, we see mistakes more clear. That's not a theory of myself, but some of the famous math professors who prefer to teach with chalk and blackboard, claiming that writing has the best speed to record and to understand information. When I specify everything on the computer at a larger state, I know very well what the results should be. Planning and budgeting is one of the most beautiful moments of developing an exhibition. You start from scratch and it all grows further and further, and along the way you discover so many new sides of the project. In preparation, I advise everyone to practice a mind game. I know chess is most popular, but my favorite is the game of Go. It's the oldest mind game and the most beautiful in my opinion. In addition, a lot of walking with a recording device in hand will help you also a lot. You relax while walking, and that often produces many new ideas and insights which you record immediately. After some time, the planning is ready and then we make the resume. To ensure that the customers of our exhibition are as satisfied as possible, we need a lot of information in connection with possible additional activities. On our Patreon, you find several lists because it's a bit boring to tell them here. On the photo you can see an old resume. This was a survey of I think 22 places. In this case there were 29 topics per exhibition that we would like information about for the planning purpose, such as who receives the exhibitions, is the staff aware of the upcoming exhibitions, complies with supplied information, do the schools in the area come up sometimes with teams themselves. If, for example, it appears that there is a great need for a certain additional information, the resume shows a summary that very well reflects the aspect in which the customers are interested. If there are only a few customers, it must be investigated whether this is because people are not aware of the material, that they do not find it interesting to have an extra material, or that we do not supply good material. But the information we find here goes much, much further. Each activity requires working hours and cost materials, and so we are directly in the budget from the planning. The resume was for 22 exhibitions. We also had groups with other amount of exhibitions. This has consequence for the budget. A total package of 22 exhibitions can be divided into 22 customers and 22 exhibitions. In principle, you should now calculate what an exhibition costs per customer and per individual exhibition. Because you deliver 22 exhibitions, there are various materials that you can purchase in a larger quantity, and this reduces costs. However, in this case, it concerns 22 exhibitions. Another time you may only deliver 10. If you had calculated the cost for 22 exhibitions and divided the total amount by 22, you would have an amount per exhibition that is significantly lower than when you had done the same if you had to deliver 10 exhibitions. Therefore, both in planning and in budget, you should take into account what each individual exhibition costs in terms of work and materials. You may not take into account the fact that you supply 10 or 22. Later, you can give a discount on the total amount, depending on how many you sell. To make it more obvious, suppose that making 22 exhibitions is cost you €2,200, and then one exhibition costs 100. You might think in this case to make 10 exhibitions this will cost €1,000, and that is where the mistake is made. To give you just one reason for this, suppose sewing a frame is only a few minutes of work. Sewing the frame costs you €50 an hour. The sewing itself takes maybe 1 minute for a frame. Per exhibition you need 10 frames, it's a 10 minutes job. But setting up the machine and getting the frame material, cleaning and putting away the machine, and cleaning the workplace afterwards, it will take 20 minutes. So to make only one exhibition, you spend half an hour, and then it costs €25 per exhibition. Compare this with the cost for 10 exhibitions. Then you will work for 120 minutes, and the cost will be €100 for them, and then it's €10 per exhibition. But for €10 you cannot sell the material for a single exhibition. So we also have to take fixed costs in account when planning and budgeting. The rent is the same every month, but heating and lighting costs are not. Besides winter and summer times, there's a lot to take into account. I was at an opening and there was hardly anyone there. It turned out that half the city was cordoned off due to a marathon. Governments often decide to reorganize or the neighborhood or something else. You can also use this in your planning. In the next video I will discuss a project that is a typical example of this. So now about the budgeting of the Jacket project. Since we worked on a national, provincial and local level, we also had a financing on all those different levels. The central activities were partly financed from national and provincial contributions, national sponsors and customers of the exhibitions. The local activities were partly financed by us because we had a provincial contribution, but otherwise the artists had to apply for the local subsidies themselves. From our national budget they received all the material for free. Well, it's a quite complex financial thing, but it's not really complex. So it went well for years until the national government suddenly stopped the subsidy for some of our employees. They say because the project did not have a national image. But by this they meant that no top national artists participated. However, the project was set up in this way to allow local artists to work together on a regional and national level. So Of course, I objected, and 3/4 of a year later, I was ruled in the right. But then it was too late for the project. I could no longer pay the salaries during that waiting period, so we had to stop the project. Doesn't take away from the fact that it was very interesting to have done it. So I thank you for watching. Next video we will talk about the intake. So see you then or on Patreon. Tack.